The arrival of the alien armada. The sky changed before anyone could react. At first, people thought it was just another cloudy day. But the clouds weren't normal. They were dark, moving unnaturally fast, and seemed to cover the entire planet within minutes. Panic spread as the sun disappeared, leaving an eerie gloom in its place. In the small town of Greenvale, people stood outside, staring up. Mary, a schoolteacher, clutched her daughter's hand tightly. The news on her phone was chaotic. Words like invasion, extraterrestrial, and unidentified craft flashed across the screen. Suddenly, the clouds broke apart, revealing the massive ships above, hundreds of them. They were sleek, dark, and silent, hovering like predators waiting to strike. World governments scrambled to respond, but the alien ships moved faster than anyone thought possible. Major cities were the first targets. London, New York, Tokyo, and Beijing fell within hours. The aliens, later identified as the Zethrans, didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They attacked. The Zethrans weren't just powerful. They were terrifying. Their weapons turned buildings into ash in seconds. Entire armies vanished under their beams of light. Humanity's defenses seemed useless. Tanks, planes, and even nuclear missiles couldn't stop them. It was as if the Zethrans were always one step ahead, knowing exactly how to counter every attack. In a hidden military base deep underground, Commander Harris watched the devastation on multiple screens. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with determination. The world above was falling apart, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Activate all emergency protocols," he ordered. "Send the signal." The signal was an encrypted message sent across the globe, reaching every resistance group, scientist, and military base that had gone dark. It was a simple message: hold the line. Help is coming. But who could help? That was the question on everyone's mind. Even Harris didn't know if their plan would work. He only knew they couldn't surrender, not yet. "Get Dr. Monroe on the line," he said. "We need her expertise now." Dr. Elena Monroe was in a bunker on the other side of the world, analyzing the Zethrans' attacks. She was one of the world's top scientists and had been studying extraterrestrial signals for years. When Harris's message reached her, she understood its meaning immediately. "It's time," she whispered. "We have no choice." Back on the surface, chaos ruled. In Greenvale, Mary and her daughter, Anna, tried to flee as Zethran drones began scanning the area. The drones were small, fast, and deadly, destroying anything that moved. Mary hid Anna under a broken car and whispered, "Stay quiet, no matter what happens." Just as a drone turned towards them, a loud explosion rocked the area. A group of local fighters, armed with scavenged weapons, launched an ambush. The drones retaliated, and the street turned into a war zone. Mary grabbed Anna and ran towards the forest, her heart pounding. Meanwhile, the alien mothership hovered over the Atlantic Ocean, its size dwarfing entire cities. Inside, Zethran commanders watched Earth's resistance with cold amusement. "Primitive species," one of them said in their guttural language. "Their struggle is meaningless. Begin the next phase." The mothership released thousands of smaller crafts, which spread across the globe like locusts. Each craft carried more drones, soldiers, and machines that began tearing apart Earth's infrastructure. It seemed like nothing could stop them. But then, something unexpected happened. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, an ancient system came to life. Lights flickered on in a long-abandoned control room. Dust-covered machines hummed with power. A soft female voice echoed in the empty chamber. "Signal received. Activation sequence initiated." Back on Earth, Commander Harris received a notification on his screen. His lips curled into a rare smile. "It worked," he said. Turning to his team, he added, "Prepare the next phase. Humanity isn't done yet." As night fell, the world seemed quieter. But it wasn't peace. It was the calm before the storm. Across the globe, scattered resistance groups prepared for what they believed might be their final stand. In Greenvale, Mary and Anna found temporary safety in a hidden shelter. Anna looked at her mother and asked, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Mary didn't know how to answer. She hugged her daughter tightly and said, "We'll try. That's all we can do." Far above them, the Zethrans celebrated their quick victories, unaware that humanity had one last card to play. Deep in space, something ancient and powerful was waking up, and it was about to change the game. The story was just beginning. Humanity's desperate plan. Commander Harris stood in the dimly lit war room, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Screens filled the walls, each showing live feeds of Earth's chaos. Cities were in flames, people scattered like ants, and Zethran ships hovered ominously over every major population center. Yet amidst the devastation, there was determination in Harris's voice. "They've underestimated us," he said, addressing the small group of leaders who had managed to survive. "We are not as weak as they think. It's time to remind them what humanity is capable of." The room was silent except for the hum of machinery. Dr. Elena Monroe's face appeared on one of the screens, her brow furrowed with concern. "Commander, even with the signal received, we're not ready. The fleet hasn't been tested in decades. Activating it could be as dangerous to us as it is to the Zethrans." Harris leaned forward, his voice steady. "We don't have decades, Doctor. We barely have days. If we wait any longer, there won't be a planet left to save." In the underground bunker where Dr. Monroe worked, scientists and engineers scrambled to decipher ancient data streams. The hidden weapon Harris referred to wasn't a simple missile or bomb. It was a fleet of advanced warships built centuries ago, during a time when Earth was part of a long-forgotten galactic alliance. These ships, hidden on the dark side of the moon, were humanity's best-kept secret. Powered by technologies far beyond Earth's current capabilities, they had been put into deep hibernation after the alliance fell. For decades, they had remained silent, awaiting the day Earth would need them again. Meanwhile, above ground, resistance cells around the world were uniting. The Zethrans' attacks had forced humanity to abandon old rivalries and grudges. In the ruins of Paris, a former general led a team of scavengers in retrieving abandoned military equipment. In Tokyo, hackers worked tirelessly to disrupt Zethran drones, buying precious minutes for fleeing civilians. And in a hidden Arctic base, a small group of pilots prepared for what might be their last mission. Among the pilots was Jason Chen, a young but skilled fighter who had narrowly survived the initial attacks. Jason had always believed humanity would one day encounter alien life, but not like this, not as prey. As he suited up, he whispered to himself, "If this is the end, I'm taking a few of them down with me." Back in the war room, Harris received a grim update. The Zethrans had begun deploying terraforming devices across key regions of the planet. These machines, massive and unstoppable, were altering Earth's atmosphere, making it suitable for Zethran biology, but deadly to humans. The clock was ticking faster than anyone had anticipated. Harris slammed his fist on the table. "We need more time," he growled. "Dr. Monroe, how long until the fleet is fully operational?" "Best case scenario," she replied, her voice heavy with exhaustion. 24 hours. "We don't have 24 hours," Harris shot back. "The Zethrans won't wait for us to fight back." Dr. Monroe hesitated before responding. "There is one option," she said. "We can begin activation in stages. Bring the fleet online piece by piece, but doing that risks exposing its location. If the Zethrans detect the fleet before it's ready, then we'll fight with whatever we have." Harris interrupted. "Send the order." The order was sent, and deep beneath the moon's surface, the ancient fleet began to awaken. Massive hangars, hidden for centuries, filled with light as dormant ships powered up for the first time in generations. These ships, sleek and angular, were unlike anything humanity currently possessed. They bristled with weapons that could tear through Zethran armor and moved with a speed that defied Earth's physics. But activating the fleet wasn't just about flipping a switch. It required skilled pilots, engineers, and strategists. People willing to risk everything for the survival of the human race. Harris's team began reaching out to resistance leaders around the globe, calling for volunteers. The response was overwhelming. From every corner of the Earth, survivors stepped forward, ready to fight. However, the Zethrans were not oblivious. In their command center aboard the mothership, the Zethran Supreme Commander stared at a holographic map of Earth. His black eyes narrowed as he noticed an anomaly, a faint energy surge coming from the moon. Curious, he murmured in his guttural language. Increase patrols near the lunar sector. If the humans have a secret weapon, we will destroy it before they can use it. On Earth, the Resistance faced its own challenges. The Zethrans had begun targeting underground bunkers, using advanced scanners to locate hidden bases. One by one, the safe havens fell, forcing survivors to flee deeper into the wilderness. In one such bunker, Mary and her daughter Anna huddled with a group of refugees, listening as explosions grew closer. "What's going to happen to us?" Anna whispered. Mary didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as dust fell from the shaking walls. Just as the Zethran drones closed in, a message crackled through the bunker's old radio system. It was Commander Harris. "To anyone who can hear this, help is coming. Do not give up. Humanity is stronger than they think." The message was a small flicker of hope in a sea of despair. But would it be enough? The Zethrans were closing in on Earth's last defenses, and the hidden fleet was still far from ready. The Resistance would have to hold the line, no matter the cost. As the night deepened, Harris stood alone in the war room, staring at the screens. "They think we're broken," he muttered. "But they've made a mistake. Humanity doesn't break. We adapt. And when we strike back, they won't see it coming." Above him, the moon's surface glowed faintly as the first of the ancient warships lifted off, its engines humming with the promise of vengeance. The real battle was about to begin. The Zethran's mistake. The first ship from the hidden fleet rose from the moon's surface like a ghost awakening from its grave. It tall, black, and angular, reflected no light, making it almost invisible against the vastness of space. Inside, systems hummed to life as ancient algorithms ran diagnostics. In the command seat, Captain Rena Park, a seasoned resistance pilot, gripped the controls. She had never flown anything like this before, and yet, it felt instinctive. "Command, this is the Erebus. Systems online. Awaiting further orders," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her mission. On Earth, Commander Harris leaned over the console, watching the Erebus on his monitor. It was the first of many ships, but it wasn't enough. "Good work, Captain," he replied. "Prepare for immediate deployment. The Zethrans are sending scouts to the lunar sector. You'll be the first line of defense." Far above Earth, the Zethran Supreme Commander observed the energy spike on his holographic display. He did not flinch, even as his advisors murmured in alarm. "The humans are hiding something," he said coldly. "Dispatch a scout fleet. I want whatever they're protecting destroyed." Within minutes, dozens of sleek Zethran ships detached from the mothership, their engines glowing faintly as they sped toward the moon. As the Zethran scouts approached, Captain Park ran her hands over the control panel of the Erebus. The ship responded with a fluidity that no human technology could match. It was like it was alive, anticipating her every move. "Captain, we're detecting incoming hostiles," her onboard AI reported. Its voice was calm, almost too calm for the situation. 20 ships, standard Zethran patrol formation. Park's heart pounded. She had fought Zethrans before, but always with outdated Earth tech. This was different. This was a fight she could win. "All right," she muttered, gripping the controls. "Let's see what you've got." The Zethran ships appeared on her sensors first, then visually. They were fast, darting through space like predators hunting prey. But Park wasn't prey. Not today. She fired the first shot, a single beam of concentrated energy that sliced through the lead ship as if it were paper. The remaining Zethran ships hesitated for just a moment, surprised by the sudden loss. Then they regrouped and attacked in unison. But the Erebus was faster. It weaved through the onslaught of energy blasts, returning fire with deadly precision. One by one, the Zethran ships were reduced to debris, floating lifelessly in space. "Commander, the scout fleet is neutralized," Hark reported, her voice laced with a mix of relief and exhilaration. "Well done, Captain," Harris replied. "But don't celebrate yet. That was just the beginning." Back on Earth, Dr. Monroe was analyzing data from the ancient fleet. She sat in her cluttered lab, surrounded by holographic projections of alien schematics and long-forgotten codes. Her team was working frantically, trying to unlock the full potential of the fleet before the Zethrans discovered its location. "Doctor," one of her assistants called out, "we've decrypted another file. It's strange. It's not just a weapon system. It looks like a defense protocol." Monroe finished, her eyes narrowing. She tapped a few keys, bringing the file into focus. The fleet wasn't just designed for combat. It was designed to adapt, to learn. If we can synchronize its systems with modern Earth tech, we might stand a chance. But that could take weeks. The assistant protested. "We don't have weeks," Monroe snapped. "Patch it through to Commander Harris. He needs to see this." While the resistance scrambled to activate more ships, the Zethrans were beginning to feel the sting of their own arrogance. The Supreme Commander watched as his scout fleet failed to return. His expression darkened. "Underestimated them," he muttered. Turning to his officers, he barked an order. "Deploy the second wave. I want the moon secured. No more mistakes." The second wave wasn't just a patrol, it was an armada. Hundreds of ships, each armed with enough firepower to annihilate the hidden fleet, set course for the moon. This time, the Zethrans weren't taking chances. On the moon, more ships were coming online. The Aegis, Vanguard, and Solstice joined the Erebus, their sleek forms glowing faintly as their engines roared to life. Pilots and crew, hastily trained on the ancient systems, prepared for battle. Commander Harris's voice came through the comms. "Listen up. You're outnumbered, but you're not outgunned. Use the fleet's capabilities to your advantage. Remember, you're not just fighting for Earth. You're fighting for humanity's survival." The pilots acknowledged, their voices a mix of fear and determination. The Zethrans' armada was closing in, and there was no turning back. As the battle began, it became clear that the Zethrans had made a critical error. They had assumed the hidden fleet was a relic of a primitive species. They didn't realize it was the legacy of an advanced civilization. The Earth ships moved with a precision and speed that the Zethrans couldn't match. Their weapons cut through Zethran armor like a hot knife through butter. But the Zethrans were relentless. For every ship they lost, another took its place. The hidden fleet was powerful, but it was still incomplete. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Park spotted a massive Zethran warship, one that dwarfed the others. Its weapons were charging, aimed directly at the moon's surface. "Command, they're targeting the base," she shouted. Harris's voice was grim. "You have to take it down, Captain. If they destroy the base, the rest of the fleet will never come online." Park gritted her teeth. "Understood." With the Erebus's engines pushed to their limit, she raced toward the warship. Dodging enemy fire, she fired a single, focused shot at its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the warship erupted in a blinding explosion, sending shockwaves through space. Cheers erupted across the comms, but Park wasn't celebrating yet. The Zethrans had made a mistake, but the battle was far from over. Humanity had shown its teeth, and now the real war was about to begin. Race against time. The moon's surface trembled as more ships from the ancient fleet began to rise. The hidden base, buried deep within the lunar crust, was alive with activity. Engineers worked furiously to bring the remaining ships online. while pilots and resistance fighters scrambled to familiarize themselves with alien controls. Time was their greatest enemy now, and the Zethrans knew it. Commander Harris sat at the center of the underground command bunker on Earth, his face illuminated by the faint glow of holographic maps. The Zethrans' movements were precise and methodical, tightening a noose around Earth's last hope. He turned to his communications officer. "Patch me through to Captain Park," he ordered. Moments later, Park's voice crackled through the comm. "Commander, the Erebus and the other ships are holding the line, but the Zethrans are sending reinforcements. We can't hold them off forever." Harris's jaw tightened. "You don't have to. Just buy us time. Dr. Monroe is working on integrating the fleet's systems with modern Earth tech. If she succeeds, we'll unlock weapons even the Zethrans can't counter." "Understood," Park replied. "But make it quick, sir. We're running on borrowed time." Back on the moon, Captain Park coordinated the defense. The Zethran's second wave was relentless. Hundreds of alien ships swarmed the moon's orbit, hammering the human fleet with devastating firepower. The ancient warships were powerful, but they were still operating at partial capacity. Park's instincts kicked in. "Focus fire on their flanks," she shouted to the other pilots. "Draw them away from the base." The plan worked for now. The Zethrans shifted their formation, dividing their forces. But Park knew it was only a temporary reprieve. They would adapt quickly, as they always did. Meanwhile, deep in her bunker on Earth, Dr. Monroe was on the brink of a breakthrough. Her team had discovered a hidden subsystem within the fleet's programming, an adaptive AI designed to enhance the ship's capabilities in real time. But there was a problem. "The AI needs a central control point," she explained to Harris over a secure channel. "It wasn't designed to operate independently. We need someone to integrate with it, someone who can make decisions faster than any computer." Harris frowned. "You're talking about neural integration. That technology hasn't been tested." "It's the only option," Monroe said firmly. "Without it, the fleet will never reach full power." "Who do you have in mind?" Monroe hesitated. "Me." Harris's expression darkened. "Absolutely not. We need you alive, Doctor. Find someone else." "There isn't time to train anyone," Monroe argued. "I've studied this system for years. If anyone can handle the integration, it's me." Before Harris could respond, an alarm blared through the bunker. Zethran drones had located their position. The Zethrans' relentless advance on Earth was no coincidence. A traitor had infiltrated the resistance. In a hidden chamber aboard the Zethran mothership, a human figure stood before the Supreme Commander. His face was obscured by shadow, but his voice carried a tone of arrogance. "They'll activate the fleet," the traitor said, "but it won't be enough. Their systems are still vulnerable. If you strike now, you can disable their core operations." The Supreme Commander's black eyes glinted with cold amusement. "Your betrayal has proven useful. Prepare for extraction. We no longer need you." In the Arctic Resistance Base, Jason Chen and his team prepared for a high-stakes mission. Their target, the Zethran terraforming device that was slowly transforming Earth's atmosphere. If they didn't destroy it soon, humanity would suffocate. "This isn't just another mission," Jason said, addressing his team. "This is survival. We take that thing out, or there won't be anything left to fight for." The team loaded into a stolen Zethran transport ship, its alien controls retrofitted with human tech. As they lifted off, Jason glanced at the horizon. The sky was tinged with an unnatural green hue, a sign that Earth's atmosphere was already changing. On the moon, the situation grew dire. The Zethrans had regrouped, and their warships were closing in on the hidden base. The human fleet was stretched thin, and losses were mounting. Captain Park's voice crackled through the comms. "Command, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them. We need reinforcements." "They're coming," Harris assured her. "Just hold out a little longer." Park didn't respond immediately. She glanced at her sensors, noting the approach of a massive Zethran dreadnought. Its weapons were charging, aimed directly at the moon's surface. "Commander," she said quietly, "if that dreadnought fires, it's over. I'm going in." "Negative, Captain," Harris barked. "You don't have the firepower to." "I'm not asking for permission," Park interrupted. "Good luck, Commander." With a deep breath, she pushed the Erebus into overdrive, its engines screaming as it raced toward the dreadnought. The Zethrans didn't expect such a bold move. As they scrambled to respond, Park fired a series of precision shots, targeting the dreadnought's primary weapon systems. The dreadnought's shields flared, absorbing most of the damage, but one shot found its mark. A chain reaction erupted within the ship, sending it spiraling out of control. "Direct hit," one of the other pilots cheered. But Park's celebration was short-lived. The Erebus had taken heavy damage in the attack. Its engines flickered, and alarms blared throughout the cockpit. "Command," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The Erebus is offline. I'm ejecting." Her escape pod launched just as the Erebus exploded in a brilliant flash of light. From her pod, Park watched as the human fleet continued the fight. She had bought them a few precious minutes, but at a great cost. Back in the bunker, Dr. Monroe made her decision. Ignoring Harris' protests, she stepped into the neural integration chamber. As the system connected to her mind, she gasped at the flood of information. The fleet's AI came alive, its voice resonating in her thoughts. "Integration complete," the AI said. "Awaiting your command." Monroe's voice echoed through the fleet's comms. "This is Dr. Monroe. All ships, prepare for Phase 2. It's time to turn the tide." The Zethrans believed they were on the brink of victory. They didn't realize humanity was just getting started. The battle begins. The lunar surface was littered with the debris of fallen ships, but the human fleet stood defiant. Now fully awakened and operating under Dr. Monroe's neural integration, the fleet moved with a unity and precision that no Zethran force had ever encountered. The Zethrans, confident in their dominance, found themselves facing a challenge they had never anticipated. In her neural integration chamber, Dr. Monroe's consciousness was a blend of human intuition and machine precision. She could feel the hum of every ship, sense the pulse of their weapon systems, and anticipate the Zethrans' maneuvers. "Commander Harris," she spoke through the comm system, her voice calm and steady. "I've synchronized the fleet. Their targeting systems can now anticipate Zethran evasive patterns. We're ready to strike back." Harris's voice crackled through the channel. "Good. Give them everything we've got. It's time the Zethrans learned what humanity is capable of." In the darkness of space, the battle began. The human fleet, now numbering nearly 100 ships, surged forward like a tidal wave. The Zethrans responded with their usual cold efficiency, but this time, their formations began to falter. The Aegis, piloted by a former Earth Navy captain, led the charge. Its primary weapon, a particle beam capable of slicing through even the Zethran dreadnoughts, lit up the battlefield. With Monroe guiding the fleet, the human ships moved in perfect synchronization, dodging incoming fire and striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Zethran fleet commander aboard one of their warships growled in frustration. "How are they predicting our moves?" This is impossible." A Zethran officer hesitated before responding. "It's the fleet. They've integrated some form of adaptive intelligence. Their tactics are evolving." The commander slammed his fist against the console. "Then we will overwhelm them. Deploy the annihilation sphere." Deep within the Zethran mothership, a new weapon was activated. The annihilation sphere was a devastating device designed to disable all enemy systems within its range. It didn't destroy, it paralyzed, leaving ships helpless as Zethran forces moved in for the kill. When Monroe sensed the device coming online, she froze. "Commander Harris, they've deployed something big. I'm detecting a massive energy surge. It's not a weapon. It's an EMP field. If they activate it, the fleet will be completely disabled." Harris cursed under his breath. "Can we counter it?" "Not directly. Monroe replied. "But I can use the fleet's energy reserves to disrupt their targeting sequence. It'll take time, and we'll be vulnerable." "Do it," Harris said. "We'll hold them off." As Monroe diverted the fleet's energy to counter the annihilation sphere, the Zethrans pressed their advantage. Waves of smaller ships swarmed the human fleet, targeting their most vulnerable points. Captain Jason Chen, piloting the Vanguard, took charge of the defensive line. "All ships form a barrier around the moonbase. We can't let them through." The Vanguard became a beacon of hope, its weapons blazing as it intercepted wave after wave of Zethran ships. Jason's crew worked tirelessly, pushing their ship to its limits. "Captain, the engines are overheating," his engineer shouted. "Keep them running," Jason barked. "We don't stop until they're all gone." Meanwhile, on Earth, the Resistance wasn't just watching. In a desperate move, teams of hackers launched cyberattacks against the Zethran terraforming devices. Using salvaged alien technology, they managed to disrupt several machines, slowing the transformation of Earth's atmosphere. In one such team, Mary and her daughter Anna worked side by side. Mary had never thought of herself as a fighter, but now, with her daughter's future at stake, she was determined to do whatever it took. "Mom, I got the codes," Anna shouted, her fingers flying across a keyboard. "Good," Mary replied, her voice steady. "Now let's show these aliens what we can do." Back in space, the annihilation sphere was nearing activation. Monroe could feel its presence like a dark storm cloud on the edge of her consciousness. She worked frantically, her mind racing through thousands of calculations per second. "Almost there," she murmured. "Just a little more." But the Zethrans weren't going to make it easy. A squadron of their most advanced ships broke through the human defensive line, heading straight for the Aegis and the other command ships. "Protect the command ships at all costs," Jason yelled, maneuvering the Vanguard into their path. The resulting clash was chaotic. Ships collided, energy blasts filled the void, and debris scattered across the battlefield. Jason's Vanguard took hit after hit, but it refused to fall. Inside the cockpit, Jason gritted his teeth. "Not today," he muttered, pushing his ship into a suicidal dive toward the Lid Zethran vessel. At the last moment, he fired every remaining missile, obliterating the enemy ship in a fiery explosion. Finally, Monroe's countermeasure was ready. With a final command, she unleashed a wave of energy from the fleet, disrupting the annihilation sphere just as it reached critical mass. The sphere's systems overloaded, and it imploded in a burst of light. The Zethran's advantage was gone. "Commander Harris," Monroe said, her voice tinged with relief, "the annihilation sphere is neutralized. The fleet is holding strong." Harris nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. "Well done, Doctor. Now let's finish this." The human fleet, reinvigorated, pushed forward with renewed strength. The Zethrans, disoriented by the loss of their weapon, began to fall back. The humans pressed their advantage, taking down ship after ship until the battlefield was littered with alien wreckage. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Zethran mothership loomed in the distance, its sheer size dwarfing everything around it. Inside, the Supreme Commander watched the defeat of his fleet with cold fury. "Prepare the final phase," he ordered. "If we cannot take Earth, we will destroy it." The mothership's weapons began to charge, and Monroe, connected to the fleet, could feel the energy building. "Commander Harris," she said, her voice grim, "they're preparing to fire on Earth. We have to stop them. Now." The stage was set for the final showdown. Humanity had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Zethrans' hidden agenda. The wreckage of Zethran ships drifted across space like shattered glass, but there was no time for celebration. The human fleet had barely survived, and the Zethran mothership loomed ominously in the distance, its massive weapons systems glowing with lethal intent. Inside the human command bunker, Commander Harris studied the live feeds with grim determination. "They're targeting Earth," Dr. Monroe said through the comms. Her neural link with the fleet allowed her to feel the charge building within the mothership's main cannon. This isn't just an attack, it's annihilation. If they fire, the planet won't survive. Harris clenched his fists. Then we don't give them the chance. Inside the Zethran mothership, the Supreme Commander stood in a cavernous control chamber, surrounded by glowing alien consoles. His officers were tense, but he remained calm, his voice cold and precise. Earth was never the goal, he said in their guttural language. Its people are irrelevant. The artifacts buried beneath their soil are what we came for. An officer hesitated. Commander, our fleet is nearly destroyed. Should we not retreat and regroup? The Supreme Commander's black eyes narrowed. Retreat is not an option. Activate the Starforge protocol. If we cannot have Earth, we will leave nothing behind. The officers exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed. Deep within the mothership, ancient machines stirred. These machines, far older than the Zethran Empire itself, began to glow, sending waves of energy through the ship's hull. On the moon, Captain Park, freshly retrieved from her escape pod, watched as the human fleet regrouped. She had barely survived her encounter with the Zethran dreadnought, but her resolve was unshaken. "What's the plan, Commander?" she asked over the comms, her voice steady despite the tension. Harris's voice came through. "We're going to take the fight to them. Every ship we have will focus on the mothership. Dr. Monroe, can the fleet penetrate their defenses?" Monroe's neural link allowed her to process data faster than any human, but even she hesitated. "Their shields are unlike anything we've encountered. Our weapons can breach them, but only if we overload their core." "And how do we do that?" Park asked. Monroe took a deep breath. "We board the mothership." The room fell silent. Boarding the Zethran mothership was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But Harris's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Dr. Monroe's right. If we don't take the fight to them, Earth is finished. I'll lead the team myself." Park immediately spoke up. "You're not going alone, sir. You'll need pilots and fighters. Count me in." Jason Chen's voice chimed in next. "The Vanguard is still standing, barely. We'll cover you." The plan was set in motion. A small strike team, led by Harris and Park, would infiltrate the Zethran mothership using a stolen transport ship. The rest of the fleet would provide cover, distracting the Zethran forces long enough for the team to disable the mothership's core. As the team prepared for their mission, Monroe monitored the situation from her neural link, but something strange caught her attention. Fragments of Zethran data embedded within the fleet's systems. She began piecing them together, her mind racing. "Commander Harris," she said, her voice urgent, "the Zethrans aren't here for Earth. They're here for what's beneath it." "What are you talking about?" Harris asked. Monroe projected a hologram into the strike team's ship. It showed an image of Earth, but beneath the surface were glowing veins of energy. "Earth is sitting on an ancient energy source, a starforge," she explained. "It's a relic of the same civilization that built our fleet. The Zethrans want to harvest it to power their empire." Harris frowned. "And if they can't harvest it?" "They'll detonate it," Monroe said. "It would destroy Earth and every ship in orbit. We have to stop them now." The strike team's stolen Zethran ship slipped through the enemy defenses, guided by Monroe's calculations. Inside, Harris, Park, and their team steeled themselves for the fight ahead. "If we reach the core," Harris said, "we disable their systems, no matter what it takes. We don't get a second chance." The team nodded in unison, their faces grim but resolute. The Zethran mothership's interior was a maze of metallic corridors, illuminated by pulsating blue light. The strike team moved silently, taking out patrols with precision. But the deeper they went, the more resistance they faced. Zethran soldiers, larger and stronger than humans, swarmed their position. Park fought like a woman possessed, her rifle blazing. "Keep moving," she shouted. "We're almost there." Jason Chen, covering the rear, threw a grenade into the oncoming wave of soldiers. "Don't stop. Go." Finally, the team reached the core. It was a massive, glowing sphere of energy, surrounded by alien machinery, but the room was heavily guarded. As the team prepared for the final assault, Harris received a message from Monroe. "Commander, the core is linked to the Starforge beneath Earth's surface. If you destroy it, you might trigger a chain reaction." Harris's voice was steady. "What's the alternative?" Monroe hesitated. "There's a failsafe, a device within the core that can neutralize the connection. But someone has to stay behind to activate it." Harris looked at his team. "We've come this far. We're not turning back." Park stepped forward. "You're not staying, sir. This was your plan. We'll need you when this is over." Harris shook his head. "This isn't up for debate. Get to the extraction point." The team fought their way to the core, planting explosives to disable the surrounding machinery. But as the countdown began, Zethran reinforcements poured in. Harris, holding the failsafe device, stayed behind to buy the team time. "Go," he shouted, firing his weapon. "That's an order." The team reluctantly retreated, leaving Harris alone. As the Zethrans closed in, he activated the failsafe, flooding the core with destabilizing energy. The mothership began to shake violently, its systems failing. On the human fleet's comms, Monroe's voice rang out. "The core is destabilized. The mothership is falling back." The Supreme Commander, realizing his defeat, stood silently as his officers panicked. His cold gaze turned to the holographic display of Earth. "This is not over," he muttered, before vanishing into the shadows. Harris's fate remained unknown as the mothership erupted in a massive explosion. But his sacrifice bought humanity the time it needed to regroup. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Humanity's triumph. The explosion of the Zethran mothership lit up the void of space, a spectacular blaze of light and debris. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, drifted in eerie silence as the shockwave rippled past. On board the surviving ships, pilots and crew members erupted in cheers. They had won the battle, but it wasn't over yet. In the underground command bunker, Commander Harris's seat was empty. The silence was heavy as the remaining leadership stared at the screens. Dr. Monroe, still connected to the fleet via her neural integration, felt the loss acutely. Her voice cracked as she spoke through the comms. "All ships, regroup and prepare for final sweeps. We can't assume the Zethrans are gone." The fleet responded in unison, their movements now seamless under her guidance. Yet a somber tone hung over the operation. Harris's last order echoed in everyone's minds. "Protect Earth at all costs." On Earth, resistance cells celebrated cautiously. In Greenvale, Mary and her daughter Anna emerged from their bunker to see the sky for the first time in weeks. It was still tinted green from the terraforming, but it wasn't as ominous as before. "Did we win, Mom?" Anna asked, her voice hopeful. Mary looked up at the faint outline of the moon and the scattered debris of the alien ships in orbit. "We're still here," she said softly. "That's a start." But the war wasn't truly over. Deep within Earth's crust, ancient mechanisms tied to the Starforge began to stir. The destruction of the Zethran mothership had triggered a chain reaction, awakening a power humanity barely understood. Dr. Monroe, still linked to the fleet's systems, felt the shift. The Starforge was alive, and its energy was growing unstable. She opened a secure channel to Captain Park, now leading the fleet. "Park, we have a problem," Monroe said urgently. "The Starforge is destabilizing. If we don't contain it, Earth won't survive." Park, her face still bruised from the earlier battle, tightened her grip on the controls of her new flagship, the Aegis. "How do we stop it?" "There's a containment protocol buried in the fleet's systems," Monroe explained. "But it requires direct input. Someone has to interface with the Starforge itself." Park's eyes narrowed. "You're saying someone has to go down there?" "Yes," Monroe replied. "And they might not come back." In the Arctic, Jason Chen and his team returned from their successful mission against the terraforming devices. Their celebration was short-lived as they received Monroe's transmission. Jason, still reeling from the loss of many teammates, volunteered without hesitation. "If Earth's going to survive, someone has to step up," he said. "I've already made peace with the risks." Park nodded. "You've got the heart of a fighter, Chen. I'll back you up." The mission was set. Jason, Park, and a small team would descend to the Starforge's location, while the fleet maintained watch in orbit for any remaining Zethran forces. Monroe guided them from her neural integration chamber, the strain of her connection beginning to show. The descent into the Starforge's core was like entering another world. The tunnels were lined with glowing veins of energy, pulsing with an alien rhythm. The air was thick with heat and a faint hum that seemed almost alive. Jason led the way, his rifle at the ready. "Anyone else feel like this place is watching us?" he muttered. "It's not your imagination," Monroe said through their comms. "The Starforge is semi-sentient. It's reacting to your presence." As they reached the central chamber, the team froze. The Starforge's core was a massive, swirling vortex of light and energy, surrounded by alien machinery. Symbols and glyphs glowed faintly on its surface, incomprehensible yet strangely familiar. "Monroe, we're here," Park reported. "What's the plan?" Monroe's voice was steady, but laced with urgency. "There's a control terminal at the base of the core. You need to override its systems and initiate the containment sequence. But be careful, the energy levels are rising fast." As Jason approached the terminal, the Starforge's hum grew louder. Suddenly, the glyphs shifted, forming strange patterns in the air. A holographic figure appeared. An alien being, tall and regal, its form made of shimmering light. "You are not Zethran," the figure said, its voice resonating like a chorus. "Why do you seek to contain the forge?" Jason hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "Because if we don't, it'll destroy our planet. I don't care who built it or why. It's our home, and I'll do whatever it takes to save it." The figure studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Your resolve is worthy. The forge responds to those who protect life, not destroy it. Proceed." Jason activated the terminal, his fingers trembling as he input the codes Monroe relayed. The core pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The team braced themselves as the containment sequence began. But the process wasn't without risk. Energy tendrils lashed out, striking nearby machinery and causing explosions. Park shielded Jason, firing at the tendrils as they approached. "Hurry up, Chen," she shouted. "This place is coming apart." In orbit, the fleet detected a surge of energy from the Starforge. Monroe, her connection to the fleet straining her to the limit, pushed herself to keep the ship stable. "Hold formation," she commanded. "If the forge collapses, we'll need to shield Earth from the fallout." Finally, the containment sequence completed. The core's violent pulsing slowed, and the chamber grew eerily quiet. The holographic figure reappeared, looking directly at Jason. "You have preserved balance," it said. "The forge is dormant. For now. But beware, others will come, seeking its power. Your fight is not over." Jason nodded, exhausted but resolute. "We'll be ready." The team emerged from the Starforge as heroes, their mission a success. The fleet, under Park's leadership, secured Earth's orbit, ensuring no remnants of the Zethrans could regroup. On Earth, humanity began to rebuild, united in a way it had never been before. In her neural integration chamber, Monroe disconnected from the fleet for the first time in days. She slumped back, her face pale but relieved. Harris's sacrifice, Park's bravery, Jason's determination. It had all been worth it. As Earth healed, a faint signal echoed through the void of space. It was ancient, powerful, and unmistakably directed at Earth. Far beyond the solar system, in the cold darkness of the galaxy, something stirred. The war was over, but the story was far from finished. Humanity had proven its strength, but the universe had taken notice. What came next would test them like never before.